So in this class, we are going to cover four main topics that basically we are talking about it, which the first one is about the budgeting, that how to write budget for a grant. So this is the first element of our class. And the second thing that we are talking about is expenses, that how to track our expenses, right? So there are some expenses, how we are going to record our expenses and how we are going to keep track of our expenses. And the next thing is about the time and efforts report. So how we are making sure that the people that you're working in one grant, so they are charged in that grant as well. Because you can be employee of ABC organization, but you might work with 5 or 6 different grants. So how you are making sure that your time is allocated to the right grant. So this is also another topic that you will talk about. And in the last, you will talk about the reconciliation process, that how the reconciliation works. Suppose you say, I have spent $5,000. Okay, did you buy a laptop with that $5,000? Was that part of the grant? Suppose you are going partying, right? You're doing something. Can you charge grant for that? Like, can you spend that or not? So that's the process of reconciliation that in the end we will talk. And in the end of the class, we will have a discussion. So one more thing, as Holland introduced me, so back in Afghanistan, I was teacher, and I know how it feels to be a student, right? So a lot of times you get bored. That's why I have brought 4 activities that nobody will feel bored. So it's more engaging, that everyone will participate and everyone will be part of the class. Because I think that's most important than like I keep talking, right? So if I keep talking, in the end you will be like, what you was talking about? But if you're doing some work by yourself, then at least in the end of this class, you will have that, at least the basic knowledge of it, that how it works and what are the different things that kind of are part of the grant writing. Right. So as I mentioned, there are 4 topics that we are going to talk, and the first one is grant budgeting. So how many of you know what is a grant? What is the word of grant? Do you know anything about it?
This money given for a specific use, you don't have to return.
Sounds good. Money given for a specific use. Sounds good. And anyone knows what is budget?
Planning.
Planning, okay. Like what type of planning? Financial planning, sounds good. So the word of grant, as one of your friends mentioned, that it's the money or fund provided by an individual. So like a grant can be given by an individual. Suppose one of you, you're very rich and you're giving some money to somebody, to an organization, that's called as grant. It can be by an organization. Suppose there are a lot of organizations that they are giving money to different people, to different organizations. It can be by a foundation. You all know about the foundation. It can be by a non-profit organization. It can be by government. It can be by state. It can be by district. It can be by any person, individual, or organizations, right? But when money is given, and that's called as grant, so there is one purpose for it. It's not like it that someone will give you money and will tell you that you spend it the way you want to spend it. Even you remember that our parents, when we were kids, so when they were giving us money, so they were telling us, so this much money you have, but I want you to spend it this way, right? So they were not kind of that they would give us money without giving us the reason for it, that why you're receiving this money and how you're going to spend that money. So the same thing, the same thing, grant also works. So if there is money, there is a purpose for it, that how that money is going to be spent. And second thing is about budgeting. As already one of your friends mentioned, that budget is planning, when we are making a plan. So there are different types of planning, right? So when we are talking about planning, it's about what to do, when to do, how to do, who are the people that involved, that they are going to do it, all of these questions, right? That we are going to find answers for them. So the same thing is about the budgeting. So we are going to make a plan about our finances and a plan about our financial activities. Suppose if there are $5,000 you have received, so you are going to find answer for all of these questions. Okay, who has given this money? How the person wants us to spend this money? And where are we gonna spend this money? What is the process of spending this money, right? So all of these questions, we are going to find answers for them. So simply grant budgeting. Now when we combine them together, grant budgeting, so it is basically planning for a fund, planning for a money that how the money is going to be spent. Very simple words, right? Nothing crazy. Just forget about all of those accounting terminologies. Money is given and how that money is going to be spent. So that's called as grant budgeting. There is money and we are making a plan that how that money will be spent. That's called as grant budgeting. So when we talk about the budgeting, always you remember that there are two parts, two main components for budgeting. The first one is income and second one is expenses, right? So when our parents, they were giving us money, so they were expecting us that we have to spend that money, right? Like in certain ways. And in the end, some of the parents, like especially my parents, they were really bad. So in the end, they would ask, how did you spend the money? Just give me a report, right? How did you spend that money? So now, my income was that my parents would give me like $20, right? And expenses, like I had to buy some stuff or I had to do something with that. So the revenue was how much I received and the expenses, how much I have spent. Very simple. But a lot of times, we all remember when we were receiving money from our parents, like there would be leftover. There would be some extra money, right? We all remember that, right? Suppose if we would receive $100, we would spend $80, and how much is left? $20 left, right? We would try to save it for ourselves. So that in accounting is called surplus. That's called as surplus. The extra amount of money that we have received and we haven't spent it. That's called as surplus. But sometimes it could be like we have received $100, but we spent $110. Out of our pocket, we have spent $10, right? Most of the time, our parents would not give us that extra money, right? So we have to spend it. Maybe they would give us, maybe they would not give us. But the encouragement was that we should not spend more than $100. So the same thing, the process of grant budgeting also works. So we are making a plan that how much our income is. We are making a plan how much our expenses will be. There will be any surplus or there will be any deficit, which that is if we are spending more money than the money we have earned or the money we have received. Is there any question about grant budgeting? So the concept of grant, concept of budget, it makes sense kind of? Like what is income? What's expenses? What is surplus? What is deficit? Sounds good. So the next thing is, this also says the same thing, that grant budgeting is, this is the process of planning. The process of planning for the allocation of financial resources. Suppose we have received $5,000 as a grant, and now we are going to allocate that how that 5,000 is going to be spent. When you are running a project, when you're working, when you're running an operation, so there are different activities. And for all of those activities, we need 4 elements, right? 4 elements we need for any activity, which in economics, we call it as factors of production. Anything we are doing, so there are needs for 4 things at least. So the first thing is natural resources or raw materials, right? So even like for running today's class, right? So in the output is that we are having grants accounting classes. So what we need 4 elements. The first one is natural resources, right? Or raw materials. As you can see, like all of these resources that we have used. And second thing is human resources, right? We need human resource. Like someone has to run it, like Holland, Marshall, and many, and all of these people, which they are involved, and they are running this show, right? If we don't have human resources, we cannot complete this project. And the next thing is capital. The next thing is capital. Capital can be in the form of monetary, as well as it can be in the form of non-monetary as well. So when it is in the form of monetary, so we need some money for today's project, right? We need some money for today's project. Just like the basic things, like to buy this stuff, to bring food, to organize the different events, the different things. So for all of these things, we need some money, right? So this is also part of it. And the last one is organization, right? So there is an organization that they are all working together under the same mission, which we could complete this project. So for the financial part of it, so there is need for planning. We make a plan. When we receive a grant, we make a plan. That okay, 5,000, like we have received 5,000. 1,000 goes to human resources. 1,000 goes to like natural resources. 1,000 goes to, suppose like to the organization. 1,000 goes to the capital. And how much is left? 1,000 is left. Out of 5,000, 1,000 is left. So that 1,000 is called a surplus. But it could be, we might spend 2,000 on human resources, 1,000 on natural resources, and 1,000 on capital, and 1,000 on organization. So it means nothing is left. All the money we have received, that's spent. Or maybe we spend 3,000 on the first one, natural resources, and like 1,000 on human resources, like 1,000 on capital, and 1,000 on the organization. So we have spent 6,000. So this is called as deficit. So this is called a shortage. We have spent more than what we have earned. But for these are some of the importance of the grant budgeting. That's why we need to make a plan for our grants. So of course, it is requirements by the federal government, like it's requirement by the funders, the organizations, individual or people that they are providing grants. So this is one of the requirements that we have to make proper planning, and on the basis of it, we can spend that grant. And next thing is about to make sure that all of our expenses, they are matching with what the goals of the grant is. Because when we receive a grant, so there are certain goals, certain objectives, and on the basis of those goals and those objectives, we can spend the money, right? And the next thing is, of course, there should be transparency and accountability, right? Suppose if you have received money, and the end of spending that money, you have to provide reports that how that money was spent. Was the money spent on the basis of what the criteria of that grant was, what that grant were, or was that money spent just for some random things, right? Which it doesn't match with the goals of the grant. So these are some of the significance of grant budgeting and why grant budgeting is important. The next thing is when we are making planning for any grant, like when we are making a budget, we have to make sure there are at least, but there could be more than that, there are at least 3 types of expenses. There are at least 3 types of costs, which the first one is direct cost. Direct cost means the money which is spent directly for the objective of that grant, for the objective of that project. Suppose if there is a project and we need human resource, and that human resource is exactly working for that project, that's called as direct cost. If you're buying some natural resources, whatever we are buying, and that is directly spent for that project, so that's called as direct cost. But a lot of times, when there is a grant, an organization is receiving that grant, so it's not necessary that only that money will be spent for that project. So it can be spent for some other stuff too. Suppose, like if we have received a grant, I work for YMCA. Suppose if we have received a grant, and that grant is suppose for our like training classes, for one of our classes we have. But from that grant, they will pay me too. I make money out of that grant, but I'm not part of the training. Like I don't work directly to train people that they're working out or to provide exercises or whatever they're doing. So, but I'm paid out of that grant. But that's not a direct expense, but still it can be covered under that grant. It's called as indirect expenses. So maybe our CEO is paid from that grant too, right? So like a lot of people will be paid from that grant, but it doesn't mean that directly they are working with that project. That means they are working with that organization and they are working under the same mission, but not necessarily working for the same grant, right? Working for the same project, sorry. And next thing is about the matching funds. So matching funds, it's kind of more technical. So how it works is, like some of the funders, some of the organizations, foundations, what they say, if you spend this much money, we will match it with this much money. What does it mean? So they say, if you spend 5,000, right? So they tell YMCA, okay, we want you to do this. If you spend 5,000 on this project, we will match it with 5,000, right? So suppose if we have a project and we are spending $20,000 for that project, so that funder or that organization will give us extra that much amount of money. They will just match it with it. So these are the different components of a budget when we are making a budget. So when you are making a budget, making sure, okay, how much is our revenue? Our revenue is $10,000. Out of $10,000, how much goes to direct cost? 6,000 is direct cost. How much is left? 4,000 is left, okay? 4,000 goes to indirect cost, right? Suppose. How much is left? Nothing is left. It's not a good planning, okay. How much we want to spend, like for this, for the indirect cost, we are spending 3,000 on indirect cost. And how much is left? 1,000 is left, right? So 10,000, 5,000 we have spent on direct cost, and 4,000 we are spending here, so that is 9,000, and how much is left? 1,000 is left. So is it a good planning? Just we will spend like by the end of this project only 1,000 extra we will have. So most of the time organizations, what they do, they look for the matching funds. We have received a grant, so you have the grant, and you're going to talk to another funder, and you tell them, okay, we have received this grant for 10,000, right? And we're gonna spend 9,000, only 1,000 will be left. So like, can you do us a favor, right? That if we spend more money on this grant, will you give us extra money, right? Suppose we say, okay, we are spending like another 1,000, will you give us like 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever it is? So this is how you're making planning for your budget. So we will come back to these concepts. So after our activity, this is just to have some ideas about it. And these are some of the common challenges that we mostly face when we are making planning for our budgets. The first thing is like future is uncertain. Nobody knows that what's going to happen. Like even about the planning, we make a lot of plans, but we cannot achieve our goals. So the same thing, it comes with the financial as well. We think that after 6 months, we will spend 1,000 for this activity, but a lot of things could happen. A lot of things could change. So this is one of the challenges. And next one is about the guidelines. There are too many guidelines. Believe me, like working with accounting, with grants, like if you go to the different guidelines, there are hundreds of guidelines, and you have to work on the basis of those regulations. You have to work on the basis of those rules. And if you're not working on the basis of those rules and regulations, so probably you will not receive the fund. You will lose the fund. Even you have to spend money, but you will not receive the reimbursement. So this is also another challenge for the grant budgeting. Another one is about the cash flow. Cash flow, as you know, cash is considered king in the business, right? If you have cash, so you can run your business. If you don't have cash, you cannot run your business. So a lot of times what happens, you have a funder and they promise you, okay, we'll pay you by this date, but they don't. So maybe there could be so many reasons for it. You cannot comply with the regulations, with the law, you're missing something is happening, so you have already spent money, but the cash is not coming to your business. The cash is not coming to your project. The cash is not coming to your organization. So basically you cannot do whatever you want to do next, right? So these are some of the challenges that we might face when we are making grant budgeting. If there is any question about the grant budgeting, I hope you have a little bit idea about what is grant and what is budgeting. And if there is any question, please you can ask, and if not, then we can move to our activity. So hopefully that can give you a clear idea that how grant budgeting works. Yes. You want to use this?
Yeah, can you give an example of an administrative support?
So administrative support is, suppose there is a grant, and that grant is going to be spent for specific goals, right? So they say this grant is for women, health, whatever. And administrative is the people that you're working behind the scene, the people that you're working to support the mission, to support the objectives of that project, to achieve the project, but they are not part of the project. So indirectly they are involved in that. And administrative could be like I'm also like administrative. I work for YMCA, I just do like the books, I do the accounting, so it's just the administration, just getting things in the right way, but like it's not necessary that I'm part of what actually YMCA is doing. I mean, I'm part of it, but I'm not involved in that project. Yes.
So when I first started, I think a mistake I always committed was not including indirect costs. Is there a way to know what you need to do? I don't know how to word this, but like
A percentage that you need to
a
work with?
percentage, right? Is there a strategy for knowing how much indirect costs to add for?
Well, it really depends that what is the nature of a grant, like when you're receiving a grant. Some of the grants are very flexible. Like you can start your project and in the middle of your project, whenever you feel, oh, like I thought that I will spend this much money on indirect costs, but actually I'm going to spend more than that. So you can request for budget amendment or you can request for budget changes. They are very flexible. Currently I'm working with a grant from early childhood and they are very nice. Like whenever I feel, I say, okay, like we are going to spend more than this. So I just submit a request and like they just change it for us, right? Of course, like you're giving a reason for it, that why we think that we are spending more here and not there. So basically, the most important thing is about the planning. So like we have to make plan for each and everything, for every activity, but of course we don't know future. We don't know like how much exactly we are going to spend on this, but of course like it's based on the nature of the grant. If they allow you to change your budget or if they don't allow you to change your budget. But some of the grants, some of the funders, like they give you the option that you can change your budget quarterly, semi-quarterly, or like annually, something like this if a project is for more than a year. So it really depends. Yeah. Any other question? Yes.
Could you please give me an example of what accounts as natural resources?
Natural resources, anything that we are using for. So do you need specifically for accounting or for anything?
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out is like paying for the rent of your space with tax accounts as natural.
No, that's part of capital.
Okay.
So like the rent is part of capital, and when we talk about the natural resources, so whatever raw materials we are using for running a project, so natural resources. But it's not necessary that natural resources is going to be same for every project. So for one project, we might need one natural resource, one type of natural resources, and for another project or for another activity, we might need a different types of natural resources. But as you mentioned about the rent, so that's part of capital. Land is part of capital.
What about materials? Like if you needed like notebooks or I need a new microphone or I need would materials count as natural resources?
So it depends. Now, if we are running a class, suppose today's class, yes, for this class, all of these materials, the notebook, pen, pencils, all of these things or part of the natural resources, the raw materials that we are using. And like the second thing is about the human resources, of course, like all of the people that they are involved with it. But when it comes to capital, so my laptop could be capital, right? My laptop is capital. Suppose if we own this building, which we pay rent for this, or we don't pay for rent for this is considered as capital. You know, like natural resources are the things just we use for the process of production. I hope it's clear.
Okay, I think I'm beginning to understand. I guess my thing was just drawing a line between that, but when you say it's the materials we use to produce something, that's what the
Right.
natural resources.
So natural resources are raw materials. So it's called as natural resources or it's called as raw materials as well. So the material that we are using for the process of production. But it could be different from one project to another project. It could be different from one business to another business. Suppose if there is a factory, probably they use different natural resources than the natural resources that we are using here. So of course it's different. Any other question? Yes, please.
So what is the purpose of matchmaking? Match fund?
Yes. So matching fund is, this is the amount of money which is going to be matched. Suppose if the funder is telling you, or like you're receiving a grant, that this grant is for 5,000. If you spend 5,000, we will give you another 5,000. So which is called as matching fund. So like there are some funders, like I work with one of those grants. So they tell us if you spend like this much by the end of this month, so this much money you will receive. It's not always like that you will receive exactly the same amount as you have spent. So they can tell you like if you spend 20,000, we will give you 5,000. If you spend like 5,000, then we'll give you this much money. So it really depends on the nature of the grant, and they will tell you that how much is the percentage of matching.
So what is the purpose? Is it to encourage you to use the money or to be more productive, or what is the purpose for?
It's just the money that you're receiving. It's just like the grant that they gave you, but they put a condition on it. So they're not just going to give you. So they put a condition on it that if you spend this much money, then you will receive this extra money, and that's going to be matched with it.
If you don't get much money, it means you have money, so you don't need grant. Does it?
No, it's like matching fund is like some of the grants they have it, and some of the grants they don't have it. So there are a lot of grants that they don't have it. Like there are only few of the grants that I would say like they have matching fund, but it's not necessary that all of the grants they will have. Like the grants that I work currently, maybe I work with 5 or 6 grants, and only one of them has matching funds. So it's not necessary that all of the grants they will have matching funds. Okay. So for this activity, we have 10 minutes. You have received $10,000, and the project is called as Community Health Awareness Program. And you are going to spend that $10,000 on personal costs, material or supplies, or natural resources, and travel and administrative costs. But one thing that, like, if you look at the actual grant, you are making a budget, there will be a lot of restrictions. There will be a lot of rules that how much you can spend on personnel, how much you can spend on natural resources, how much you can spend on supplies. But there is only one condition. There is only one restriction that it says 10% of the total grant can be spent on administrative costs. Suppose maybe you will think that out of this 10,000, I spend 8,000 of it on administrative costs, so this is not allowed. It cannot be more than 10% of the administrative cost. So this is the one condition of it. And the second, in the end of it, there are some guidelines. So when you're preparing your budget, so you go through these guidelines, and after that you make your budget. So if you want to work in groups, feel free to do that. And if you want to do it individually, so you can do that as well. And now, if you have any questions, so the people who are attending virtually, if they have any questions, so Marshall, you can let me know, or whoever is managing. And if you have any questions here also, so please let me know.
Yeah, I'm going to.
And one thing to remember that It really depends on the nature of a grant, and it really depends on the nature of a project. So it's not necessary that for one project there will be more spending on personal expenses, so it will be same for all the projects. So it really depends. One project could be different from another project. There might be some of the projects that we spend more on supplies than the human resources. There could be a project that we spend more on human resources than supplies. So it really depends from one project to another project, and it's always helpful to read and go through that what is the nature of this project and how, based on your based on your estimation, that how the money is going to be spent on these different categories. Your friend is asking a very good question, right? So this is what I was explaining before, and maybe it's helpful for all of you as well. So she's asking, suppose if I put 2,000 on travel expenses, but I don't spend, but we don't spend all of the 2,000, and instead of this 2,000, suppose we spend some more on supplies and materials. So how that's gonna work? As I mentioned before, it depends on the nature of the grant. Some of the grants, they give you the option that you can move fund from one component to another component. Suppose like you're already been 6 months that you're spending from this grant, and now you think that I will spend more money on travel than expenses, so you can just request that, okay, I'm going to move $100 from travel to supplies, or 100 from supplies to travel. So it's some of the funders, they give you the option, and some of the funders, they don't. Yes.
So what if they don't, then you have the leftover on the different.
Yes, exactly. So this is if they don't, like if it is leftover, so that we talked about it, that's called a surplus. And if you spend from the organization budget, so that's called as deficit.
So what do you do with the surplus? Then do you report it to them when you treat it? Or
Usually you use it for the development of the organization. So that's going to be used for the improvement, different activities in the organization.
A follow-up comment on that, it's always worth it to ask, like the grant, whoever's managing the grant. I've found that most times, if I say, hey, you know what, I didn't spend as much as I thought I would for these workshop stipends. A lot of people waived them. But I could really use this money to translate the toolkit that we're developing. I can't spend it right now. My grant report's due tomorrow. Can I keep this $700 to go towards translation? And they said yes. So you never know, it's always worth it to ask. The worst they can say is no. And sometimes there's a process to okay, if you don't spend this much, you have to write us a check for that much and send it back. So those are just some of the details to keep in mind. But for the most part, people don't want to take your money back. They want you to spend it, so you can find a legitimate reason to spend it. It always is worth it to just ask.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Even if it's the day the grant report is due. We've done that.
We talked about the budgeting, that how to make a budget. I hope your budget is now ready, right? So now we have the budget. We have submitted our budget, and our budget is approved. So we have received that grant. When we receive that grant, what we're gonna do? We're gonna start the spending, right? You have received that $10,000. And out of that $10,000, how you're going to spend it? So there were 4 classes, there were 4 categories that you are going to spend that money. So the first category for that was going to be spent on personal, on human, on materials, on travel and administrative costs, right? So this is your budget is now ready. And the second thing is when it comes about the expenses. Suppose when you're spending money, you have to keep track of your expenses, that how much is spent. And you have received that $10,000 from that organization, and after 1 year, which that is the due date for submission of this grant, so after 1 year, you go and you tell them that I spent all of the money without showing any proof, without showing them any invoices, without providing the exact information that how that money was spent. Do you think they will accept it? For sure not. So they will say how you have spent that 10,000 money. So you will say that like I have spent this much on personal, this much I have spent on material, this much I have spent on travel, and this much on administrative expenses. So they will not accept it. So what they want from you, they want tracking of all of your expenses. Okay, when it comes to the personal expenses, suppose you have put $6,000 on personal expenses. Did you spend that $6,000, did you pay for one person? Was it paid one time? Was it paid in different months? Was it paid on the basis of percentage? And how that was paid? So they want to know that how that money was spent on the personnel. The same thing when it comes to the material. Maybe like you have bought like so many things, different items you have purchased. So you have to provide the invoices and you have to provide the tracking information for all of your expenses, that how that was spent. The same thing when it comes to the travel expenses. Okay, so you say that I have spent $2,000 on travel, so they will not accept it. What they will ask you, show me the mileage reimbursement documents. So you say that I have paid like $2,000, so they will ask you that how you have spent $2,000 on travel expenses. So you have to provide information. So for that, the next component is that we have to know when we are running a grant, when we are managing a grant, is that's expense tracking. To keep the track of our expenses, to make sure that we record each and everything that we are going to spend. So these are some of the importance for the tracking. So why we have to do tracking? So the first thing is, it helps you to control that how you have spent. So if you don't keep track of your expenses, and suppose in the end of the year, you look at it, that instead of spending 6,000, you have spent 10,000. So the funder says, I'm not gonna pay this. So if you have spent it, you just pay it by yourself. I'm just going to pay 6,000 because I promise you this much money I will be paid by the funder. Another thing is the compliance. Compliance is a very important thing for any organization that you're working with the grants. So you have to provide proof and document for each and everything you have done with that grant, right? Suppose if you're saying I have spent this much money on this activity, you have to provide the exact information that how that money was spent. And next one is about that transparency. Of course, like maybe you can provide invoice, but you have purchased something, you have purchased a laptop, but that laptop was not used for this project and that was used for personal activities. And that's not helpful for that project. Suppose you have done some shopping, maybe you have bought some supplies, but those supplies are for your kids and those supplies are not for this project, right? So this is also another thing. This is the requirement of keeping the track of your expenses, which it brings transparency, it brings accountability. And the next thing is about the budget monitoring, that like we have to make sure that how the budget is spent, and if the budget is matching, if our expenses is matching with the amount of money which is left. So every time you're spending some money, so you have to make sure that it's aligned with the money is available. So you cannot spend more than that, and you're trying to not spend less than that, that you can keep that surplus. So these are some of the importance about the keeping track of your expenses. The next thing about the tracking of expenses, there are different ways, right? There are different ways that how we keep track of our expenses. Like some people, like personally, for my personal expenses, I have notes. Everyone has in their phones, right? So you can just keep record of everything, that how much you're spending, daily, monthly, annually, or whatever it is. But the same thing like for businesses, also they have different ways, which the first one is it can be like manually, which you can use like Excel sheet. Suppose you can use like journals, you can use a piece of paper and like just writing down all of your expenses and after that providing the report. And the second thing, it can be on the basis of the automatic way, which there are a lot of softwares, there are a lot of applications, there are a lot of platforms which you can keep record of your expenses. You can track your expenses and how much you have spent. So currently at YMCA we are using, it's called as DAXCO, but like some people they are using QuickBooks, like I have used S400, so it just really depends, right? But like the nature of keeping the record of these expenses, it could be different from profit to non-profit organization, but since we are focusing on the non-profit organization, so there are so many platforms, there are so many softwares that you can use it when you are keeping track of your expenses. And these are some of the comparisons that which one is good, like is manual good or is automatic is good. But for sure, like if you have a small business, like if there is suppose $10,000 budget, maybe you can do it manually. But like if you have received $1 million budget and the grant is for 1 million, obviously it's very hard to do it manually. It's obviously very hard to do handwriting all of the expenses. So like most of the organizations now, they are using like automated tracking. And even like one interesting thing which I found when I was doing my taxes, so there is softwares that even you can subscribe like for, I think $50 or something like for the whole year. And you can track all of your expenses here, right? So like when you're doing your tax return, so you submit all of your expenses that you get more tax return. So there's a software that even like you don't need a finance person to help you with that, like a person who is doing your taxes. So suppose I spend this much money and you have 1099 or whatever you have, you just put it there, and after that it will tell you that how much tax return you will get. So it's very simple, right? So you don't have to do anything, just you're going to write something. So I will say like there are so many platforms, but it depends on the size of the organization and it depends on what the nature of the organization or project is. But obviously they have some pros and cons, which like when it comes to the manual, it takes more time, but like the automated one takes less time. And when it comes to the accuracy, obviously manually, it's very hard to keep accuracy. And when it comes to the automated one, like the accuracy could be high. And about the scale of the work, which one is doing less or more? So obviously for the manual, it's limited, and for the automated, it's unlimited. So these are some of the pros and cons about the expense tracking. We have another activity, which this activity is on the basis of your budget. So the budget you have prepared, right? Your budget is ready, right? So now you have the time to spend money out of your budget. And I'm going to share that, like, suppose you have to spend this way, and after that making sure that how much money is left. So this is a case study, which it kind of shows that how the budget you have is spent and what are the different expenses. So it has given you the expenses, but there are only 2 questions, very simple questions. But I'm sure maybe your budget doesn't match with this budget, which is okay. If you want to like make an expense report for your own budget, that's also okay, that's fine. But if you're using this one, that's also okay. So whichever you want, but I would prefer like using this one if you want. So the only thing is that you look at how much I have spent on personal cost, this much, okay. How much was spent on material, this much. How much was spent on travel, marketing, administrative. And after that, okay, this is all of my expenses. What's the question? The question is, what is the total amount spent so far? This is the first question. How much of the budget remains? How much money is left? 2 questions, right? If you want to do your budget, make your expenses, track of your expenses, that's okay. If you want to use this one, that's also okay. So we have 10 minutes. And please let me know if there are any questions. You can add that 500, there is a typing mistake. So that 500, you can add it to personal cost. But if you have you have added to any other category, that's also fine. So just make your budget as 10,000. But like, obviously you don't have to look at that one. So that's like part of your budget. So you don't have, so your budget is for 10,000 and you have the expenses. But if you want to look your budget, you make it for 10,000 again. So you can add that 5,000 to the personal cost. Okay. So the first topic that we studied was budget. We have money, that how to spend, that's our expense tracking, and we have done that as well. But another thing that, as I mentioned before, Personal or human resource is one of the biggest components of your budget. Whenever you make your budget, so that's like for most of the organizations, that's like the biggest part of it. Like we are spending around 63, 64% of our budget goes to the personal expenses. But another question is, suppose if there is a grant, right? Any one of you, you are working with a grant. Suppose you are lawyers, you are working with the immigration. You have received 5 different grants. You have received 5 different grants, and all of you are working with those grants. And how you're going to charge your salary, how the human resource expenses are going to be allocated to those 5 grants. Suppose, as I mentioned before, there are around 10 or even more than that grants that I'm managing, or at least I'm part of it, right? So it doesn't mean that equally I spend time on each of those grants. Maybe one grant I spend 5% of my time. Another grant I spend 50% of my time. Another grant I spend 13% of my time. It could change from one month to another month also, which is really interesting. From one month to another month. Like this month, I could spend more of my time on one grant, and next month it could be totally different. Because some of the grants, they have due dates, right? So they have like the date that we are working more on those grants in one month, but in some months we don't work at all on those grants. So it's not accurate that those months that I'm not working on those grants, I can charge my time on those grants. I can charge my time on those grants only if I'm working on those grants. So on the basis of this, every grant needs time and efforts report. So I'm not sure if the organizations that you're working with it, maybe monthly you will receive from your accounting department a report called as time and efforts report. So you have to fill out that report, and after that you have to submit it. So basically time and effort report says that like how much of your time was allocated to different grants. If there are 5 grants I'm managing, 20% of my time is allocated to one grant, 30% to another one, 10% to another one, whatever to another, all of these things. So it's the process of allocation of your time to different grants, right? Which is called as time and efforts report. So like for me, there are, I think around 23, 24 grant employees that they work for YMCA. So what I do on 24th of every month, well, I haven't submitted this report this month. I just remembered about it. So like this is the report that I have to submit it before end of the month to all of those people. So they will fill out that report and they will tell me how much of their time was allocated to which grant. And once they submit it to me, then what I do, I go to the labor distribution report, right? So like how much they were paid. So now what is the problem? The problem is the human resource will track your time one way, and your time could be allocated differently. So this is like the tricky part. This is like most of the confusion. Suppose like you're clocking in, clocking out every day, and that's going to one specific expenses. But like the accounting person has to correct it. Okay, so you are charging for the entire month only one grant, but that's not accurate. When you submit your time and efforts report, then I will go back and I will change it. Okay, so your 100% of time was not spent on this grant, but 5% was spent on this, 10% was spent on that, 2% was spent on that, and like it could be like the whole list of all of the grants that your time was allocated to. So this is also another part of grant management. So this could be for different reasons that's why we are doing it. So this is one of the requirements. So it's not ethical that if you're not working on a grant, if you're not working on a project, to just charge that project. It's against of the regulation of any grant. So they don't allow you that if you didn't spend your time to charge your time on them. And the next one is like, it just brings like the uniform, like that whatever you are doing, you are charging the correct program and correct project. And next one is about to make sure that whatever you are doing is it's matching with all of the rules, or matching with the regulations of the grants, and obviously it brings transparency, which this is also one of the principles of accounting, that everything has to be ethical. And so these are some of the best practices for accurate reporting, that how we want to report our time. So the first thing is, as I mentioned before, like I can spend 5% of my time on one grant. So I have to keep track of it. That this month I spent 2 hours on this grant, right? That in the end of the month I can submit my report. And the next one is that you should provide like the details of, okay, so I have spent 5% of my time on a grant, but I don't know which grant. So you have to provide exact information, and there should be the full details about the timing that you have spent, when you started, when you clocked in, when you clocked out. And the next one can be, so all of these time and efforts reports, they should be verified by your supervisor. So when it's submitted, like if you receive it from your accounting department, so you put your timing, and after that your supervisor will verify it, that yes, this much of timing of this person was spent on this program. This much timing of this employee was spent on this project. So supervisor verification is required. And the next one is, so it should be consistent with other records. So it's not kind of you're claiming that you have spent this much money. So it should be matching what the software that you're using, which it tracks your timing, that how much you have spent. You say, okay, I spent 5 hours on this grant, but actually the other platforms that they keep track of your timing, it shows different thing. Your velocity shows different thing, or whatever application you're using. So you have to be careful about that as well. And the next one is, yes, use time tracking if you can. So there are some softwares, because before when I was working for other nonprofit organizations, so they were kind of more flexible. Like I would submit my time in the end of the week, but I had to keep track of it. You know, like, okay, this day I started at this time and I finished working that at this time. So you have to keep track of all of the time that you are working. And next one is, you have to provide information on the basis of the timing of that's happening. You know, like it should be on the basis of timely manners. So like if you are spending 5 hours this week on this grant, and you are reporting it next month, or you're reporting it after 6 months, or you're reporting it hopefully not next year, so nobody can fix that, and like that's not the way it should be. So these are some of the these are a few things about the time and efforts report, that yes, it's important to charge the right project, it's important to charge the right program, and how you're spending your time. And we have another case study. Okay, so if there's any question about the time and effort report, please you can ask, and if there is no question, then we can move to our case study. So basically, I'm trying to focus more on those activities, which you can have more idea about it and how it works. Is there any question about time and efforts report? Is it clear? So it's basically allocation of your time to a project, allocation of your time to different programs. Okay, so just like your budget and expense tracking report, so this is also a very simple time and effort report. So the only thing that you have to do is just go through the community health awareness program. This is the program, and you're looking at the timing of 2 people, which the first one is program coordinator. That was program coordinator, health education workshops, right? So this is the person, and the second one is health educator, which the health educator is what they are doing. So that's creating educational materials, and program coordinator is doing health education workshops. So now, just like your budget, you have to make sure that on the basis of the tasks assigned to a person, you're going to allocate the timing for them as well. So if, like, suppose you are spending 5 hours, right, on one program. So like, it doesn't make sense just you're going to put like more than that, right? Like you're putting like 50% of your time on that program. So it really depends on what you're doing. And again, it really depends on the nature of the project, and it could be different from one program to another program. So the very simple way is just for the program coordinator and health educator, make 40 hours. How you're going to allocate the timing. Everything is clear? Okay, so now do you have like the idea that how to allocate your time or the timing of your employee, if your supervisor, to different programs, to different projects? Okay, sounds good. So coming now to the last part of this presentation. As I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, so there are a lot. Like if you want to talk about each of them, it will take us like days, right? There are so many things. But hopefully you will just have the idea that what are these different concepts. If you're going to apply for a grant, at least you will know that what are few things that I should know when I'm running a grant, or if I'm working with a project which is grant funded. So this is about the reconciliation. So the first step was, you have your budget, right? You have money, and the funder gave you money. And after that, they told you, okay, show me that how you spent your money. So you have your expense tracking, right? But now when it comes to the expense tracking, it's a lot of time hard to believe, to trust that how everything was spent, right? So like they say, okay, you gave me 10,000 and I spent $10,000. I spent 5,000 here, 4,000 here, and 2,000 here, or 1,000 here, right? So this is 10,000 that all I have to spend. It's very hard to trust, right? What they say. At least, well, you might trust that organization, that person, but like accounting says that whatever you're doing, so you have to provide the document for it. You have to provide the proof for it, which is called as reconciliation. So reconciliation is basically the process that it shows that how much money was spent and what our bank account says. How much money was spent and what our bank account says. So simply, suppose if I'm doing reconciliation, and like you can do reconciliation for the different financial activities. Like you can do reconciliation for your credit card. Suppose in the end of the month, end of March, you look at your credit card, your business credit card, and you select 50,000 is spent from your credit card. And you're kind of, okay, this 50,000 is spent. So you have to make sure that each transaction which has happened, that makes $50,000. This is called as reconciliation. 50,000 is already spent, but now you're making sure that you have evidence, you have document, and you have proof of each of the transaction which that makes 50,000. Okay, so like 50,000 is spent from my credit card this month, from our business credit card this month. I go to each transaction, okay, 200 here, 100 here, $50 here, $1 here, $10 here, right? And you're going to add them all together, and in the end you're making that $50,000. So this is called as reconciliation. So the same thing is, suppose if you have a grant, I still am working with a grant, it's called as GSRP, probably you might have heard about it, it's a big grant. So like we have to provide like documents for every transaction, which is so interesting. Like even small amounts, that like maybe $5, $2. So still we have to provide the evidence. Another interesting thing is a lot of time, like you cannot use your general ledger report. Like because suppose if you're using QuickBook, if you're using like Tally, if you're using like Dex or whatever, so you cannot use the transactions which you have put the input, right? What it means, like if you're providing your general ledger to them, so a lot of time they will not accept it. Because who has made that general ledger? You, your accounting team. So what they want to see, they want to see that transaction actually has happened. Suppose if I say like, okay, I have spent $200 on supplies, okay? $200 on supplies, it shows in your books that yes, $200 was spent, but now the question is, where you have spent that $200? I purchased it from Costco. So now you have to show the receipt that you have purchased these items from Costco. This is how it works. when it comes to the reconciliation, so they want to see the actual expense. Even if you keep track of it, so for everything you have to keep the evidences as well. You have to show the proof for each of your transactions. It's not just about you keep the track of your expenses, but it's actually showing the proof that how that money was spent. And these are some of the importance of reconciliation, which obviously accuracy is important. Like a lot of times, instead of like putting 1 0, we put like 2 zeros. Instead of 2, we put 4. So like it could be a huge difference, right? So we have to make sure that like whatever we have written, so it's matching. And like usually reconciliation is pretty good if you're doing it like weekly, you're doing it daily, you're doing it monthly, it's up to you, but obviously organizations, they do it monthly. That in the end of the month, everything is matching with your bank statements, with your bank account. And of course, like the compliance, which is also another requirement, that whatever you are going to say, it has to comply with all of your regulations, with the rules for the grant, with the rules for the fund. And errors happen, like there could be a mistake, so it's pretty easy to catch it when you're doing reconciliation, that if there is a mistake, like easily you can correct it. Like if you're not doing reconciliation, suppose for the whole year, like and you are starting it, suppose in November or in December, almost close to the end of the year, and there was a mistake in January or there was a mistake in March, so it's very hard to go back to that month and change everything, right? Because probably it seems like it's connected to so many different books, and you might have to change a lot of things. So that's why it's easy to do the reconciliation on time. And obviously, like improving the health of your, the financial health of your organization. It's always good. It always looks good in the eyes of your employees and in the eyes of stakeholders and your funders, that they see everything as clear and you're providing evidence and documents for each and every of your transactions. Because like the very simple thing is like, if we say like we have spent $500 here and we do not provide any evidence, so what they will think? They will think like, oh, did they have a party? They spent that $500 on somewhere else. So obviously they will ask us, right? Even if they don't ask us, like next time when they are going to give fund, or like they are going to open another grant, so probably if they have another candidate, they will prefer another candidate than us, right? If they have one grant and there are 2 candidates, so they will prefer another one, because they will say like, it was very hard to work with these people. So they were not submitting their documents on time. They were not providing enough information. We had to go back and forth too many times, like, you know, a lot of things. So it's good to provide a good picture in the eyes of the funders and the organizations that they are funding our projects. And these are some of the steps about for the reconciliation, as I mentioned before, but like they can be in order, or it really depends on the procedures that different organizations they have. So the first thing is that we have to bring all the documents. If transactions happens, so we have to collect all of the documents for those. And after that, we have to compare, like, okay, so these are the documents, this is what it shows. It shows 200, is it 200? It's not 200, we have to compare it with what actually has happened. And next one is to make sure that how much was the income, how much was the expenses, how much we owe, how much is going to be the surplus, whatever it is. And like, if there is any discrepancies, if there is anything which is not matching, if there is anything wrong, anything is missing, so we can find it here. And if there is anything inconsistent, right? Suppose like a date is not correct, like the amount is not matching, like it's just few cents are different, few cents are not matching, so easily we can catch it. And if you find there is some mistake, if there is any error, so you can just adjust it and you can correct it. Another thing, when you're doing, which is very common, when you're doing reconciliation, so you will find some errors, you will find some mistakes. So you have to correct those errors, those mistakes. Again, you have to document that you have corrected these mistakes. There were some errors, you fixed those errors, and now you have to report it. Because next time it will be another question, that why it was like this and now it's like this, right? So you have to provide clear information that how that was fixed. And after that, it's good to verify all of the adjusted changes. And that's all. When we report, we generate our reconciliation report. Thank you so much for your time, everyone, and I hope you have enjoyed your class, and I hope you have learned a few things. Thank you so much.